reaction, the game I made for the GMTK Game Jam this year. And if you're clicking on this video, you already know what a game jam is, so I'm not going to explain anything to you. Let's just go ahead and see how I made it. Oh, and you don't really think much about collecting footage when doing a 48-hour game jam, so most of the footage I show here will either be from the final game or some videos I uploaded to Discord. So when I heard the theme join together, the first thing I thought of was an idea that I had had floating around for a while. Basically, I wanted to make a game about some sort of cowboy who threw a lasso at various objects and could swing across them, but I already know that the physics system in Unity is a huge hassle, and programmatically connecting a lasso to different objects would be an even bigger hassle. So instead, I just decided to have a rope or a chain connected to one object and also the player. But what kind of person has a chain connected to them and an object? Well, the only thing I can think of is those old-timey prisoners who have those striped jumpsuits and are connected to balls and chains. This probably came to mind because I was playing Twilight Princess recently and got to the Snow Peak Temple, where you gain the ball and chain weapon. So I drew a mock-up of one of those silent movie prisoners you see in cartoons from the, like the Middle Ages. Anyway, I drew him and put him up on Discord, where somebody compared him to Waldo or Wally from the Where's Waldo series of books. So inspired by that, I decided to call him Dully, because he just looks like he's not really interested in what's going on. So I built a new Unity project and threw Dully into it. And next I had to create a little character controller. Luckily, I've made plenty of platformers for game jams in the past. The hardest part is determining when the player should be able to jump. In my first game, The Switcher, I used a separate hitbox to determine if the player was touching the ground, and with that I had problems with the player jumping on walls. With my second platformer, Insane, I had problems where the player couldn't jump if they were on slopes because I just did a flat raycast down to the ground. So I decided to do a sort of mix of those two systems and make a raycast down towards the ground from both sides. So luckily I didn't end up having too much trouble with Dully himself. Most of the trouble came when we introduced the ball and chain. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. But the way the chain works is I've manually created a bunch of hinge joints starting at Dully and connecting all the way to the ball, and that's what forms the chain. The problem with this method is hinge joints can't really handle any force, so whenever you try to put any pressure on them, they'll just act all janky and kind of snap around. So in order to remedy this, I added a script that adds some force to the ball to push it back towards the player and vice versa whenever they got separated too far, to mimic the effects of the chain. And I was satisfied enough with this method to end for the day. I was already halfway done with the jam, and I didn't really have anything made except for Dully and the ball and chain, so I needed to go ahead and start creating some levels. Sorry, did I say levels? I meant an entire open world prison with multiple upgrades. Yeah, all my previous jam games have either been score-based or level-based, so this time I want to switch it up and do more of an open world type thing. Luckily that fits with the prison escape theming, since I can just have a giant prison with multiple floors, each of them containing different upgrades for Dully. So with this in mind, I began creating the first tutorial area. This was sort of a sandbox for players to test out the different mechanics with the ball and chain. After that, I made a giant pit for the player to fall in, sort of like that one area in Super Metroid. I also created this giant pile of paint that you coat the ball in to be able to climb up walls, and that's the first upgrade, which people gave some creative names. Next, I decided to take a break from level design and do a little decorating. I added some sleeping guards and prison windows through which you could see the disgruntled prisoners. After that, I created another area with the next upgrade. It's this giant spike that can break the chain, and I guess this kind of negates the entire theme, but hopefully Mark Brown doesn't play this and disqualify me. Next, I added a small little tunnel that you had to move your body through in order to get to the next upgrade, which was a jetpack. And this upgrade was pretty fun, so of course I only used it for 2 segments in the entire game. One was to go up this giant shaft to get to the key, and the other was to use the key to get to the elevator to finish the game. Yeah, I know it's a little lackluster, but I was getting pretty close to the end of the second day, so I just had to put something on there. After that, I decorated the rest of the new areas and went on to adding some thought bubbles. I was originally going to add voice acting, but I figured that would make the game a little less accessible, and it would be much more of a hassle to record than just typing some text out. I ended day 2 by adding some sound effects, which I pitched down from my normal voice. I started off day 3 by creating some music. I decided to make it in GarageBand since I didn't really have enough time to look through my library of video game soundtracks and choose some instruments that sounded good. I created a neat organ melody track inspired by Pizza Tower, added a default bass line from Apple Loops, and threw in some drums for the second verse. I also added a title screen and ending screen with some basic UI like a quit button. And with that, I was basically done. I uploaded the game to itch.io and added a web build, and I submitted it to the jam. I also added some screenshots and a walkthrough for the people who got stuck. And you guys really seem to like this game. Even though it's my most recent jam game, it's also my most viewed. So I don't know if that's a function of the popularity of the jam itself, or if I just had some really good marketing for this one. So that's pretty much how I made Chain Reaction. I'll have a link in the description if you want to play it, and you're also legally obligated to give it a good rating if you've watched this much. And that's just about it, so have a good day, I guess.